We are recording. Little housekeeping, I should say. I know I've been slacking. Oh man, I've been slacking. Put everybody on mute now. So I'm putting calls up in the private group, private Facebook group. I know y'all been hitting me up like, yo, what's happening? So I'm in the process of trying to. We got a lot of videos, man. I was looking. I just haven't realized how many videos there are. It's 2 a week since September 20th, once this thing started. So, man, it's amazing, amazing journey, man. I'm really just thankful God has given me the opportunity to do this, and we're going to try to compile those videos and start uploading those onto the actual course with inside the course. It's a lot of work because we have to go through a lot of stuff, but it's a labor of love. We're going to make it happen because I want you guys to be able to have that access. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm so busy. I'm horrible at doing the stuff. So I'm hiring someone to do it. So hopefully all the videos will be on the course and you guys can, instead of looking on the Facebook group, you guys can just go to the course and say, oh, let me see what that was. All right. I'm going to hold off onto the questions for right now, and then we're going to get them at the end. We're going to do this in about an hour, okay? And we're probably going to split it up into 2 parts. So if you guys didn't know, we did not have a call on Sunday because I was in Charlotte. Some of you guys were here before when I made the announcement and said that I was not going to have a call on Sunday because I didn't want to distract. A lot of times after those type of meetings or those seminars that you go to, a lot of the real learning happens outside of the seminar, right? A lot of the real money-making ideas start to formulate outside of the seminar when you're in conversations with other people. And so I wanted to be able to kind of like just dive into that and be able to bring back as much information with some things that are happening out there in the sub-2 world and also the trust world. That first day was land trust and how to properly set them up. And I mean, I learned so much. It was ridiculous. I'm gonna try to give you some of this stuff. Some of the stuff I can't because they made me sign a non-disclosure. But a lot of this stuff you will be able to know because some of the stuff I've already done, so I can tell you that stuff for sure. But we're gonna go through this thing. So, all right, I think I've been blabbing on enough. We are doing subject twos. Yay, everybody wants to do subject twos. Subject twos, all right, subject to pre-existing financing. So basically it's subject to a mortgage. We are taking over, we are controlling. How do I stop that? Mute participants. It's supposed to be muted. I don't know why. Let me try that now. So we're taking over the properties where they're being deeded over to us. Okay, where they're being deeded over to us. I guess I didn't do that. They're being deeded over to us, but the mortgage is going to stay in the original owner's name. So some of you guys know this, some of you don't. So if you know it, don't be stingy. Let everybody else learn it too. Okay. Here we go. So we got John and Jane who just fell in love with this house, right? A little crooked, a little lopsided, but they love the house, right? So John and Jane, they're over here. They got this house and they got a pretty good deal on it. And then, you know, they're together and life is going well. And then all of a sudden, Jane, who's the breadwinner of the house, loses her job. John is a stay-at-home dad, okay? And they can't afford this house, right? So beforehand, when they got this house, they received the deed, okay? So they got the deed for this property, right? And they were able to get this deed, not because they had the money, but because they went to Chase Bank, right? And Chase Bank gave them a mortgage, or really they took out a mortgage, okay? Which essentially what you're doing when you take out a mortgage is you are voluntarily putting a lien on a piece of property, okay? So here is Chase Bank. This is my depiction of banks, like front steps looks like. All right. And they have this mortgage, which a mortgage is nothing more than a lien. Okay. So this bank has a lien or the mortgage going from onto that house. But John and Jane have the deed. So they are in control of the deed. They can do whatever they want with the deed. Here's what you have to understand. Okay. The deed is separate from the mortgage. Okay. You can have a mortgage, you can have a deed. You can also not have a deed, but still have a mortgage. Okay. You can not have the deed, but still have the mortgage. That right there is what makes subject twos possible, because we are taking over, or better yet, we are controlling this property. Okay. We're controlling this property subject to the pre-existing mortgage. Okay. So all the terms that John and Jane agreed to on their mortgage, you put mortgage on here, all the terms that John and Jane agreed to when they sign all those papers, right? So I'm just going to abbreviate it because it takes too long for me to write it. You are, if you're going to take over or you're going to control this, you are agreeing to this mortgage. Okay. But Jane lost her job, and now Jane cannot afford to pay the mortgage on this house. Now Jane has fell behind. The house is maybe, needs a little bit of love, maybe needs some flooring. The kitchen is relatively new, but they need maybe some flooring, and it needs some paint, right? So maybe it only needs like $5,000, but she lost her job. There's no way she's paying $5,000 to get it back up. Plus, she's about $3,000. So let's just say she's 2 months behind on her mortgage. So she's $3,000 in the hole, okay? So here we go, and we're going to talk about later how to find some of these people, some things we're going to do, but you need to understand the concept. She lost their job. So now what we do, we come in as investors, okay? This is us, big head investors with money in our eyes, right? So we're looking at it as like, okay, well, we have some money, right? And we can help them with their problem, because what's going to happen inevitably, if John and Jane cannot pay this mortgage, foreclosure, right? Thank you, appreciate that. If you guys just come in, do me a favor, just police yourselves and come in and put yourself on mute. So what happens inevitably is that John and Jane are going to lose this house, okay? What they decide to do is they decide, you know what, we're going to take this deed and we're going to deed our property over to this investor, okay? So now John and Jane does not have the deed anymore, but does John and Jane still have the mortgage? Is the mortgage still in their name? Yes, right? The mortgage is still in their name. As far as the bank is concerned, John and Jane still are responsible, financially responsible for this house, okay? So you have to understand the type of desperation a person would need to be in order to do this, okay? These people completely understand that if they don't do something, they're going to lose the house, and they're going to have bad credit because they're going to have a foreclosure on their name, okay? So instead of doing that, they decide to trust you. This is important because you are going to be responsible for this. They decide to trust you that you are going to do what you said you were going to do, okay? Because when this happens, you're going to sign a whole bunch of paperwork, but what it's going to say is that now John and Jane are not responsible for this mortgage. Even though the bank thinks that they are, now you are paying the mortgage, okay? Now this investor is paying the mortgage, okay? And so because you're paying the mortgage, because you're signing up for this, right? You have to be responsible. You have to be financially responsible to be able to do this, okay? This is not something that people or investors, wholesalers, or someone should do and take on lightly. In wholesaling, you wholesale a property, you go there, you find a motivated seller, but let's say you can't perform, you can't find an end buyer. What happens? The house just gets reverted right back to the owner. There's no, you really didn't have the house anyway. You just controlled it for a short period of time. This, however, this is where you have to understand that if you cannot do this, someone is going to get hurt financially, right? Someone, namely John and Jane, are going to get hurt, and you, the investor, if you're the person that took on the property and decided to keep it, you're going to get hurt because you're going to lose the money that you spent in catching John and Jane's mortgage up and making the house, rent ready or retail ready, depending on which way you want to go. So I wanted to show this to you before we get into some of my notes here, because I need everybody to be on the same board with how this process works. Now, this is something else. This is something on this end where I've kept the property. I've never done this. Okay, I've never opted to keep the property. I'm changing that after this seminar. What I've done is what they let me see, where's my eraser at? What I've done is taken this process. Please, when you come in, mute yourself. What I've done is I've taken this process and I've inserted myself here. Okay? I've inserted myself here in between John and Jane. So they did a purchase and sales agreement with me for a subject to, which requires a little more paperwork. We're going to go over all the paperwork on Sunday, because we're not going to have time to do all that today. It's a lot. Okay. So I remember, like I said, you want to probably chop this up into 2 parts. What I did is I took this and I got this under a contract under a normal purchase and sales agreement. So a purchase and sales agreement, PSA. Okay. And then, so now at that point, I had control. I had equitable rights in this property. And then all I did is I assigned my rights to this end investor, who then did the subject to. Does that make sense? So I took this process and I inserted myself here so I can make money in this section, okay, while the end investor did this portion, because I did not want to be personally responsible for paying this person's mortgage. Now, even with that, as a wholesaler, you still have to have a level of responsibility, because my name is still on paperwork. So I need to be able to check this investors. I need to be able to make sure that they can perform as best as possible, right? So I need to make sure that they can perform on their end, because I don't want to have my name mixed up in something, because even though I'm probably nothing's going to happen to me, if a lawsuit comes back because they can't perform and then they don't pay the mortgage and all this other stuff, they're going to say, okay, well, where's the chain of custody? Where did this happen at? And then my name is going to be in there. So it's in my best interest and the best interest of the investor and the sellers to make sure that everybody's on the up and up. All right. So real quick, there's a couple of different strategies, all right? But subject to, at its core, is the process of a homeowner or homeowners deeding a property to an investor, and then that investor paying the mortgage, okay, on behalf of the homeowner. The homeowner's name, their name, okay, is still on this mortgage. This investor right here never changes the name on the mortgage, right? They don't do that. They just pay it just like John and Jane was paying it. The bank receives it. Oh, excuse me. Most of the time, the bank pays their mortgage online. They go online, they log on, boom, pay the mortgage. All this investor is going to do is get their login and then just log in. And instead of the money coming out of John and Jane's account, it's coming out of their account. All right. So hopefully I've given you a good depiction of what this looks like. Now we're going to talk about it. Okay. So one of the things before we kind of really get into where'd my notes go? Where did my notes go? Oh, here we are. Okay. One of the things that we need to get into, we need to understand. Hold on, somebody not on mute. Let me see something. I gotta make sure everybody's on mute because somebody will get mad. All right. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to make sure that everyone understands some of the risks that are going on with this. All right, this is not something that we just do and we don't there's a level of knowledge that you need to have in order to do this. Why? Mute. Mute or continue. Yes. New participants on entry. Yes. All right. Hopefully we're going to keep doing this. All right. So number one, buying, like I said before, buying subject to you are taking over the pre-existing mortgage. Here are some of the things that you need to understand. That loan is going to remain in the seller's name. All right. The property is going to be conveyed over to you as the owner, which means you now have control of the property, which means on paper, you actually own that property. Okay. The old sellers own the mortgage. All right. You will be making payments on that loan. Okay. Here's some of the benefits. And if you guys are taking notes, write some of these benefits down. All right. So this is the benefit to the investor. Okay. So real quick, there's no need to get a bank loan. Why? Because we're not changing any of the loan information. So there's no need to get a bank loan, which means you don't need to use your own credit because you're using the existing buyer's credit. There's no need to, you're not filling out any applications or anything like that. It's also pretty fast, okay? It's a pretty fast closing once you gather all the information and you can make the decision. Once all that stuff is in and turned into the attorney, it's a pretty fast closing, all right? Because you're not dealing with financing issues or anything like that, okay? There's a minimal amount of upfront money, all right? This is what we're gonna go into what I'm gonna be looking for subject twos. If you guys find some, please let me know because I wanna buy them. And if you want to buy them yourself, there's going to be a good way that you can look at it. We're going to talk about it towards the end of this today. Okay. So you don't need a whole bunch of upfront money to get into these. All right. Here's a really key thing. If you plan on holding it, you have their ability to take over at low interest. So right now, interest rates are relatively low as compared to about a decade ago when they were like 7-8%, right? So we're looking at lower interest rates now, but this is why we know that the bubble is coming. The bubble is about to get bursted. Bursted is not a word, but you know what I'm saying. The bubble is going to burst, right? Because interest level rates are low. The reason why they're low is because they're trying to entice, or they have been enticing people to purchase, but eventually they're going to have to go back up to what their normal standards are, all right? There's a reason why they do that, to get influx of cash coming into the marketplace, so that then they can go ahead and start to hike up the interest rates and make more money. Banks are not there; they're not our friends. Okay, so but right now, let's say you get into it. Let's say 5 years from now, 4 years from now, interest rates go back up to 6.5 or 7.5%, but you find someone who has a mortgage and you do a subject to, and they're at 4.25%. Well, guess what? You get to take the advantage of that low interest rate. Okay. There's no personal guarantee on this thing, right? Because you're not guaranteeing the mortgage. Okay. Benefits of a mortgage pay down, and you get the benefits of that. What that means is that if you guys don't know, if you ever take out a loan, most of the interest is paid in the beginning. Right? So most of the interest is paid in the beginning, and as time goes on, more and more goes to principal. So if you were to buy that house right now with a bank, you would have a very, very small amount of your money. Let's say you're paying $1,000 a month on a mortgage. You probably only have like $20, $30 on your very first mortgage payment that's actually bringing your balance down. The rest of it, you're just giving it to the bank so they can make their money. But if someone has been in a mortgage for 7-8 years, guess what? That's all accelerated now. So now when you hop in it, most of your money is going to bring down the principal. Okay. So you get to doing that. You get to take in over a loan with, amortized loan. So here's some of the risks. Sorry, man. I was drinking some soda earlier today. I got burping a little bit. Not widely understood. Here's some of the risks. It's not widely understood by a lot of people. So the stuff that you're actually going to be learning over the next 2 days between today and Sunday, most people don't understand, okay? Even so, to some point where there's a lot of lawyers that don't understand it. A lot of lawyers think that it's illegal and they don't want to do it. They don't want to touch it because they feel like it's illegal. It's not illegal, all right? If you guys were wondering whether or not this is legal, it's 100% legal. Sometimes you have to, you'll get with a lawyer that says that's not, they just don't know what they're talking about. Just like I've ran into lawyers that say you can't wholesale, you don't have a real estate license, and they say that that's illegal. They just don't know what they're talking about, okay? So because of that, there are certain states and attorney generals that frown upon subject twos. There is legislation in certain states where they are trying to make it illegal. And as of right now, they have not done so, okay? Another risk of it is that it must be managed. This is not a set it and forget it type of a deal. You have to constantly manage this, okay? We're going to talk about some of the other pitfalls and the problems of doing subject twos a certain way, okay? It's an advanced strategy, like I said, and you must perform to its fruition. So you have to see it all the way through. So if you are planning, let's say you get into someone's mortgage 7 years on a 30-year mortgage. They've been in it for 7 years, right? They've been in it for 7 years, but they had a 30-year mortgage. Well, you have 23 years left. That means you are married to that property. If you choose to use this strategy, because within subject twos, there's different exit strategies. So I just want you guys to understand that, okay? The subject two is just the action of getting the deed and taking over the mortgage, okay? But within that, there are different strategies. So one of the strategies is holding on to that property and actually just paying it just like you were living there, okay? If you decide to do that in that particular case, you are married to that mortgage, so you have to stay true to that mortgage, okay? And so if you make a bad deal, obviously the seller's going to get frustrated and you have some issues. One of the other risks, these are some things that until I went to this seminar, I didn't even think about. And if you guys ever get the chance to go to his seminar, obviously he's a way better at it than I am. Tony Robinson Sr. did a phenomenal job. So kudos to him. But one of the things, he brought up a lot of stuff, real life stuff that happened to him that I didn't think about. He was saying that he was into a subject to, he had it for about 4 or 5 years. And then all of a sudden he gets a phone call from a GMC dealership where the lady who they subbed to the property from, who deeded the property to him, was trying to get a car loan. Now this is like 4 or 5 years later, okay? They've been paying the mortgage, never been late on the mortgage, been paying it on time, keeping track of the house, keeping the house. Matter of fact, they had a tenant inside the house at the time. And she had the people call up from the car dealership because she was trying to get this mortgage and they couldn't get the mortgage because their debt to income ratio was too high due to this mortgage still being on their names. That's something I never even thought about, right? So he was talking about some of the pitfalls and some of the problems of being married to a mortgage for so long, okay? This person, even though even though it's a long story, it went through lawsuits and a whole bunch of stuff. It took him about 2 years to go through this process. But even though it was well documented that they were doing it and everything was on the up and up, and even though he won the lawsuit in the long run, he had to go through all that drama, okay? So these are some of the risks that you need to understand that are associated with subject twos if you decide to use them and stay with it for a long period of time. This is why I'm choosing not to stay with them. But it can be very lucrative if you decide to do so, okay? All right, so one of the main things that everybody asks about subject twos, okay? Well, if they do it, isn't there something, there's this clause, there's this thing that people talk about where they can take the mortgage and like the mortgage company finds out, and if they find out, can't they make you pay for the mortgage all up front, right? And the answer to that is yes, okay? It is called a due on sale clause, okay? Due on sale clause. Every mortgage now has them, pretty much. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find a mortgage that doesn't have a due on sale clause within their contract lingo. But the due on sale clause was created in 1982. It was the the Garn St. Germain Depository Institution Act of 1982. And basically what it was done is during that time, they wanted to, banks were just essentially just taking advantage of people, and investors were taking advantage of the public. Okay, so what was happening, basically in order to stop that, what they said is that anytime there's a transfer of ownership, okay, a transfer of ownership via deed or other methods, which I did not know some of these other methods, via deed or other methods. For example, anytime there is a lease of 3 years or more, that could also be considered a transfer of ownership, okay? So if you have a 3-year lease, it can trigger the due on sale clause, okay? And what they say is anytime there's a transfer of ownership, the bank has the right to call the loan due in its entirety. So if you owe $100,000 and you did this subject to, and the bank finds out and they want to, here's the key, and they want to, it is a right that they have, but they don't have to exercise that right. So if they want to, they can say, you know what, we see that there was a transfer of ownership. You deeded the property over to Tommy Holt, and Tommy Holt is not on the mortgage. And so we are exercising our right on the due on sale clause, and we are going to call this entire loan due. It looks like you owe, what, $100,000? Yeah, we're going to need all of that money this month within the next 30 days, or we're going to start going through the foreclosure process, okay? That is the due on sale clause, okay? So as a practical matter, what happens with this, the banks never call the loan due. So I'm leaning more on Tony's experience and his stories, all right, because I've only done 2 of these, okay, and I was in and out of them, so I didn't do a sale close, wouldn't affect me. But he said he's been doing it for 23 years. Right now, as we speak, he has over 70 of these going on right now, like that he owns, okay? Not to mention all the ones that he's already sold and that, you know, I don't know how many he's done in his lifetime, but he's done a lot. But he said he was in a mastermind of about 300 very, very seasoned investors that all of them have done all of them have done multiple subject to properties. And they said the speaker got up and asked, hey, how many of you, now mind you, out of 300 investors, there's 1,000 of subject to deals that have gone done. They said, how many of you have ever had a bank call the note due to the due on sale clause, and no one raised their hand? So you can understand the banks really don't want to do this. Matter of fact, Tony was saying that the banks, multiple times, the banks knew exactly what he was doing. And they said, listen, we understand what you're doing. You know what we could do. We could call this note due, but they don't, because they want to keep making that money. All right. It's in their best interest for you to go ahead and drag that mortgage out, because they get paid more on the long run. All right. But if you mess up, you have to understand that they can do it. Okay. They can do it. So that due on sale clause is something that you need to understand. It's the reason why you need to understand is because you're going to have to explain this to your seller. All right. You're going to have to explain it to them. So if you don't understand it yourself, how are you going to explain it to them? All right. So is it a crime or fraud to violate due on sale provisions? Not currently. It's not currently a crime. But there are some states that, like I said, are trying to implement this legislation and stop these type of transactions. Okay. So let me see. I'm going to read out an example. I copied this as fast as possible. So this is an example that Mr. Robinson gave of what it looks like on a normal contract, right? So it says transfer of the property of a beneficial interest in property. As used in this section, interest in the property means any legal or beneficial interest in the property, including but not limited to those beneficial interests transferred in a bond for deed, contract for deed, installment sales contract, or escrow agreement, the intent of which is the transfer of the title by borrower at a future date to a purchaser. So if you guys heard what I said intended but not limited to those beneficial interests transferred in a bond for deed, So if you put a bond on your property, okay, a little JoJo needs Big Mama to put up her house. Right? Bank has the right to call that loan due. Okay, a contract for deed, so that's basically the subject to. All right, installment sales contract, which means owner financing. Okay, or an escrow agreement. All right, any one of those they can call a loan due. Okay? The banks have the right. Okay, but not just limited to those, because like I said, I put on some other ones. If you, which I didn't know, if you have a lease greater than 3 years, that counts as well. Okay. So how would the bank find out? Obviously, you're going to do a deed transfer. Sometimes.
Man, that's why he jump on the call. He's talking about what I'm doing subject to.
So, hold on, man. I had to click somebody off of mute. So if they find out, a lot of times they'll find out by accident, right? A lot of times they're going through, and something happens where they need to pull information. And the bank will find out, hey, this was transferred, right? So checks, if you're writing checks, the checks are coming from you instead of the homeowner or the previous homeowner, okay? The big one is changing insurance, because you're going to have to put this insurance, you're going to be responsible for this insurance. So the insurance needs to be in your name. So a lot of times that's going to happen, especially if if any of you guys have ever had to have an adjuster, like a public adjuster, insurance adjuster, come to your house, right? Because you had to make an insurance claim. A lot of times the claim will come to the homeowner and the mortgage company, or the person who's responsible for the claim and the mortgage company. So if the property was deeded to me because I'm the investor, I did the subject to, I have the insurance. So the insurance check is going to come to me and the mortgage company. So when the mortgage company looks at the property at 123 Main Street and they see Tommy Holt on the check, they're gonna say, who the heck is this? Okay, that's one way that they'll find out. So these are some of the things that you need to be mindful of before you go into this subject to investment strategy. So I want to make sure that in a basic snapshot, we got to first figure out how are we going to find these properties. So we went over some of the good stuff about it. We went over some of the bad things about it. But now let's go over the practical steps of how to find them, all right? So one of the things that you want to look for is we want to find a motivated seller with a loan to value of about 80% or less, okay? 80% or less is what we're looking for. Now, why that's important, why that's good for us as investors is because, as we're going to do here, I'm going to show you guys here on the whiteboard, is it harder to find someone who's willing to sell their property for 50% of the market value, or is it harder to find someone who's willing to sell it at 80% of the market value, right? I mean, it's common sense. It's going to be a lot harder to find someone who's going to say my house is worth 100,000, but I'll sell it to you for 50, than it is to find someone and say, hey, my house is worth 100,000, but I'll be willing to let it go for 80. Okay, it's going to be easier to find these, which means a lot of your wholesale deals that's kind of slipped through your fingers. You're going to be able to hold on to these and use this strategy in order to still make money off these properties. Okay, you can either make them the way I've done them through wholesaling them, or the way that I want to start doing them, which is doing the flips. Okay, so the other stuff with this, we have to, once we've gotten in contact with a homeowner that's motivated and fits our criteria, we need to verify everything. One thing about this is a lot more paperwork than wholesaling, okay? If you're going to take it on yourself, it's a lot more paperwork. If you're going to wholesale it, if you're going to assign it like I did, it's really not that much more paperwork, but it's still a little bit more than just a normal wholesale joint venture, assignment contract, okay? So we got to verify a lot of things. So one of the things that we're going to do, I think I have it in the course already, is we're going to need a mortgage authorization form, okay? So if you guys go into the course, you'll see at the very top, under downloads, you'll see a mortgage authorization form. It's really simple, standard mortgage authorization form. You go in there, you'll have, you fill it out for the most part for your seller. They're going to give you the information, and then they have to sign it. Once they do that, they can either, well, I was going to say fax it, but I don't know if people fax anymore, but scan it and just send it as an email to whatever their bank is. Okay, Chase, Mr. Cooper, Bank of America, whoever, right? So you send it off to them, and they will then see it and say, verify with the homeowner that, okay, Tommy Holt now can now speak on this mortgage on behalf of Johnny Homeseller, right? That gives me the ability, that gives me the same access to all their personal data as it relates to that particular mortgage. I cannot go in with that paperwork. I can't pull out and take a loan or anything like that. It gives me the ability to obtain information, which is what you want. Okay, so you're gonna have to know what their mortgage rate is, what the interest rate is. Are there taxes and insurance? Are they being escrowed? If so, how much are they? What type of loan? You brought up a very good point in this thing. I never thought about it because I've been on kind of like in that middleman position. But if you're going to take this thing on and you're going to be married to it for the next 20, 30 years, wouldn't you want to know what kind of mortgage? Because maybe that mortgage has a balloon payment. Maybe it's a 30. So here's just so you guys understand this. They'll say, hey, it's a 30-year mortgage. I'm like, okay, cool. What that means is just that the payments are amortized off of a 30-year term. It doesn't always mean that you're going to be paying for that for 30 years. Basically, it's saying, hey, we're going to give you the payments as on a monthly basis as if it was going to pay for 30 years, but you might have a balloon payment in there. And if everybody doesn't know what a balloon payment is, they might say, hey, it's a 30-year mortgage with a 10-year balloon payment, meaning that we're going to give you the price of a 30-year mortgage on a monthly basis. That's what you'll be paying if you were to pay it for 30 years, but that's not going to happen because at the 10th year, we are requiring you to pay the remainder off. All right. So it's a $150,000 mortgage. You've been paying on it for 10 years. Maybe you've gotten the mortgage down to $100,000. And at the 10th year, you're going to be responsible to give Wells Fargo or Chase a $100,000 check to pay that off. All right. So you have to understand, as an investor, you have to read through the fine print to say, okay, is this a true 30-year fixed mortgage where I can see this through to fruition all the way to 30 years if I needed to, or do I have a balloon payment? And if I do, when is that balloon payment due? And do I feel like I can handle that? What's my exit strategy for that? So these are things that you need to think about if you're going to take on this subject to and hold it long term. You don't need to think about this if you're, well, morally, ethically, you should be thinking about this as a wholesaler, right? If you're just going to wholesale the contract to someone who's going to do something. But as a business practice, it's not going to affect you as like the one that I've done, or the two that I've done. If there's a balloon payment next month, I mean, I've already made my money. I'm out of there. It doesn't affect me financially. It would affect me morally. I wouldn't feel right about it if I didn't do my job, but it wouldn't affect me. I wouldn't really be liable for it. All right. So you have to know these things. How many months are they behind is another thing that you need to understand. How many months are they behind, and what are the late payments? Because every month, this might take you another 30 days, or maybe today is the 22nd, and maybe you can close in 14 days, but guess what? The mortgage is due on the 1st, right? So that's another payment that you're gonna have to make. What are my late payments? What's the payoff in 30 days? Not just today, because you're not paying it off today. What's the payoff in the next 30 days? These are things that you're gonna need to know. All right. Another very good key thing is that you're going to have to verify. I hope you guys write some of this stuff down. You can always go back and watch this thing, but you're going to need to verify that there are no prepayment penalties. Because if you're going to do it the way I'm suggesting, I'm going to show you guys later on here in about a couple of minutes, the way that I want to do them, not to say my way is right, but the way that I want to do them, I'm trying to get into the subject to do a light rehab and then put it on the MLS to sell it. Now, if I'm going to do that, and there's a prepayment penalty, I want to know about that. How much is that prepayment penalty? Because I need to take that into consideration. Because if I sell it before that time frame is up, I'm gonna be the one that has to take that L. All right. Excuse me. So once we understand that, we got all our information. We've spoken with the mortgage company, and we've ascertained all that information. Now we just have to get the house under contract. And we're going to do that through a regular purchase and sales agreement, not the one that you're going to wholesale with because it's missing some information, but there's another one I put into the group, into the downloads. It's a subject to purchase and sales agreement. It's going to have more information. I'm probably going to upload another one that protects the investor a little bit more, and just ask basically more questions, and it gives you a little more protection. Okay. You also are going to have them sign a disclosure statement. Now that's something I believe is not in the course, but I'm going to upload that now, or upload that shortly, to make sure the homeowner really understands what they're getting into. That's number one. Forces you as the investor to be honest, number two. And number three, which is the big one, protects you if you decide to hold on to this thing, okay? Because it's very, 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 very clear that they are deeding over this property to you, that they have no financial interest in this property whatsoever, okay? So it's very, very clear. So it's something that you need to understand. And like I said, we're going to have to split this up into two videos. But it's something you need to understand it, and not just understand it through here, but you need to understand it so you can say it correctly, so you don't turn your buyer off. Because you can say it one way, and it's going to be something that is going to kind of be like a sour taste in their mouth. You can say the exact same thing, but just say it in a different manner, and it says, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." Okay, so you got to understand how to get that point across. But that disclosure letter is key. It's very, very, very important. It's one of those things that you don't need if everything goes smoothly, right? But if you get into a lawsuit, it's something that you're going to want to have initialed and signed, okay? And the next thing, after you get all that stuff done, all you're going to do is just go to a closing attorney that's competent in substitute. And you're going to find those by going to a RIA. You're going to find those if you're in the Atlanta area. You can come. You can ask me. If you're not, go to a RIA or get involved with some other real estate groups that know. Hey, I had this subject too. I went through this attorney. It was great. Okay. So let's go ahead and show us how we can make some money off these subject twos here. All right. Blow this up a little bit. Get you out of here. And how do I erase? I need to clear everything. Everybody got this little drawing, right? It makes sense? Makes sense. All right. Clear all drawings. All right. So I'm going to do this here on my computer. I'm sorry, on my calculator here. All right. So let's do this. Let's say we come across a seller, all right? They're motivated. They want to sell, and we found out through our for our research that the ARV, okay, our ARV on this property is 150, okay? So we got an ARV after repair. I know some people are new. After repair value, meaning after we fix this thing up, make it look like HGTV 2019 standards, we can sell this on the MLS for $150,000. Okay. So if you guys know, if you're in the course, if you've been in the course for longer than a couple of days, you know we need to take this price point and we need times it times 0.7. Okay. So if we want to wholesale this thing, we need to get this, let me see, 150 times 0.7. We need to have an all-in of 105. So times 0.7. That 0.7 represents 70% of this 150 equals $105,000. Okay. So which means, as in, if I'm wholesaling this thing, all right, I need to get the all-in price between repairs, acquisition, and my fee as a wholesaler to 105. So let's say we figure, okay, they need to be all in there at 105, and we go and we walk around the house, and we realize that they need $20,000 in repairs. Okay, so they need 20K in repairs. So we got to take 20 off of that. So now we're down to 85, right? And we're trying to put $10,000 in our pocket, right? So we're trying to put that in our pocket. So we got it, then we're down to 75. So that means the homeowner would have to agree to sell their property for $75,000, okay, in order to make this deal work with this current example that I'm giving you, right? Top of the market is 150,000, but this represents our profit margin. We need to have a 30% spread here. That makes sense for us. So in order for that 30% spread is represented by the difference between 105,000 and 150,000. In this particular case, that's a $45,000 spread. So if an investor says, hey, if I can get all in for 105, I'll be willing to do this deal because I'm gonna make $45,000. But the only way you can do this is I have to repair this house to make it look like HGTV. And after I walk through this house, it's going to cost me $20,000 to do this. And then I have to pay Tommy his $10,000. So really, we need to get this thing under contract for $75,000. So remember what I said, this homeowner is motivated. They want to do this. Here's the problem. They owe $105,000 on a mortgage. You see, so this particular example would work out perfectly if they only owed 75 or less, or let's say they owned it free and clear. They're going to get $75,000 in their pocket. Some people will be happy with that and say, okay, I'm willing to walk away from this problem for $75,000. But in this particular case, they can't do that, okay? They can't do that because they still have a mortgage. So everything else is the same. Everything else is the same, right? But right here at 105,000 is the mortgage. Okay, so you got $105,000 mortgage. How can we make this work? Because we still need to put in some work, right? We still need to put some work into this property, but we also need to make sure that we're taking care of our business on making sure that we can follow through what we're doing, what we're saying we're going to do, and make sure we're doing right by this seller. Okay, so let's just say we're going to move this here. Let's just say, let me undo. I'm sorry. Let me clear it real quick. Clear all drawings. So house is worth 150. Okay, but we need to get this thing down, and they have a $105,000 mortgage. Okay. So let's just say we have to, oh, that's an ugly 5. Let's say we have to catch up on a mortgage payment. Let's use that first example. We have to catch up on 2 months mortgage payment. So that 2 months mortgage payment is $3,000. Because remember that example I gave you with John and Jane, right? They're behind 2 months, which is a total of three months. 3 months on the mortgage, right? So that gives us $108,000. Okay. We also need to be mindful that of some repairs. So let's say we need to do a light rehab. Let's say it's just kitchen. Let's just say it's paint and flooring. Okay. Which is, I'm trying to give you guys exactly what I'm looking for here. All right. So let's say we need $5,000 for some paint and flooring. Okay. So that means this investment, we're going to be responsible for this $105,000 mortgage. We got to pay $3,000 to catch back up, okay? And we got to do $5K to get it looking pretty. So in order to make money, we got to get this thing to be over $113,000, right? Because the mortgage is 105. Hope I'm explaining this to you guys and you guys are understanding this. The mortgage is 105. The ARV, after we spend our money on it, the ARV on this thing is going to be 150. So I'm looking at this and say, okay, we got a $105,000 mortgage. this $3,000 is included into that $105,000 mortgage, but I also have $5,000 that I need to do in order to make this thing pretty enough that I can put it on the MLS and sell it, okay? Now, this particular deal wouldn't really make too much sense for someone who's trying to wholesale it, because you're going to want to add, you know, $5,000, $10,000 on top of that. Then they're going to have to spend $5,000 or so to get it ready. And at the end of the day, it's really not worth it once you add all the fees and everything into it. But in this particular case, let me see if I can do this right here on the calculator. We got $105,000 responsible mortgage that has to get paid off. And we basically have 3 plus 5, that's 8. We have an extra 8 that's coming out of our pocket, because here's where the sweet part of this is. I'm not paying for this mortgage up front. The bank is going to get paid at the end, okay? What I have to be responsible to pay for is I have to pay closing costs, because I have to get this property deeded over to me, okay? So let's just say that's $2,000 in closing costs. So I'm going to put $2,000 here on my calculator, okay? I also got to catch that mortgage payment up so we can stop foreclosure. So that's $3,000. So I'm at $5,000 total out of my pocket. And I need to spend another $5,000 on carpet and paint. So easy math. We're at $10,000. But at $10,000, remember, that property is now deeded to me. That means I'm the owner of that property. They, Jim and Jane, are still, I think his name was John. Maybe I changed his name like twice already. Jim and Jane, or John and Jane, they still own the mortgage. I own the house, okay? Because I'm an honest person, and I have a contract saying that I will, I'm still going to pay the mortgage. But right now, I own the house, they own the mortgage. And I own that house for $10,000 in this particular case, okay? So I'm physically out of pocket $10,000. But now, guess what? This house has new paint, and it has new flooring, and we've cleaned it, and it smells good, and it's nice, and it's pretty, and we cut the grass, and we put some flowers out there, and it has these curb appeal. So now I throw it on the market for $150, okay? So I throw it on the market for this $150, and I get it sold. Now, at this $150, if you guys know, I'm really big on making sure that the numbers are true, right? You guys been around a lot. I don't just say, oh, I made 100, or, you know, the difference between, you know, what I had to come out of my pocket and 150, that's my profit. No, because there's some cost in doing business, right? So out of this 150, I have to take out 6%. Let's say I wasn't a real estate agent, okay? Some of you guys aren't real estate agents, so you're gonna take out the full 6%, okay? Plus, on average, about 3% for closing. So that's a total, 6 plus 3 is 9. So I'm gonna take that 150, take that $150,000, and I'm gonna subtract 9%, which comes out to $13,500. That leaves me with a profit of $136,500. Now, I still am responsible for this $105,000 mortgage. So $105,000 has to go out to Wells Fargo, or to Chase, or to Mr. Cooper, or to Bank of America, right? So I have to subtract that $105,000, which leaves me with $31,500. But wait, I still have to put my $10,000 back in my pocket. Easy math. I just made $21,500, okay? I took a property that would not have made sense as a wholesale property, and I did a light rehab on it, just doing some carpet and paint, okay? And I took something that most wholesalers would just throw away and say, oh, this is a dead lead, because they got a high mortgage, they had a $105,000 mortgage. They took that lead, and I made $21,500 off of it. This is exactly what for about the last month I've been talking with Max about, and how he's doing and how he switched. He made $50,000 last month off of 2 subject twos, and he put that YouTube video up. So yes, I encourage you guys to watch it. I think he spent like $14,000 on one of them and made 30, and then like a little less than the next one and made another 20-something thousand dollars. So these are the deals that I'm not particularly fond of fix and flips right now. I'm not trying to get into any more fix and flips. but a subject to where I can take over and be out of my pocket 10, 15, maybe even $20,000 to get into the property, catch them up on payments, pay for closing costs, and do a light rehab with maybe, some flooring, some paint, maybe update a bathroom or two. That's something I'm perfectly okay with if I can go ahead and I can double my money, okay? And these are ways that you guys can kind of get into light rehabs, be in and out the market, and put this thing back on the MLS because now you own it, okay? Somebody's drawing on my screen. How does someone do that? Everybody sees that, right? It's not just me. Everybody see the red mark? Whoever did that, you're a bad person. It wasn't me. I don't know. It wasn't me. This is how you guys can get into these things once you understand this whole process, okay? They erased it now. Appreciate you. You're a good person. So once you understand this stuff, you'll be able to do this. So the whole goal of this two-part series, and maybe you might do a three-part series, I don't know, is number one, for you kind of understand and get the concept of it. The next time we open this thing up, we're going to go over the paperwork side, which is the boring side of things, but it's the important side of things on how to write these things up and what you need to look for, okay? So let me stop this real quick. And I want to open this up for Q&A. So you guys can either raise your hand virtually. Don't sit there like this because I might not see you. You might be on 2 or 3 screens over. You can raise your hand virtually. There's like 3 buttons. You can raise your hands and ask questions. I'm also going to go through the chat. Daryl says he's excited. It's first time here. Appreciate you, Daryl. We'll get you in the Facebook page, Denard. Nobody has any questions on subject twos. Everybody completely understands what we went over. It's going to be easy. Okay, there you go, Bill. Bill has to start it off. What's going on? Oh.
You hear me?
Yeah, I got you now, man.
Tom, what's going on, family?
I'm good, bro. I'm good, man. Thanks for asking.
So 3 quick questions. One was in the beginning you were talking about you will have to take over the insurance, switch the insurance over into your name once you transfer it, right?
Yeah.
But if it's with the PITI, how would you be able to switch it over if they have an escrow type setup of a mortgage payment?
Yeah. So once you get all the information, one of the pieces of paperwork that we have, or that I now have, is a request to. There's really no way around that. Like the insurance has to be in your name, right? So when you speak with you get that mortgage authorization, you ask them those key questions. Hey, is the insurance all wrapped up in escrow? They're going to say yes. They're going to say with who, and you'll be able to get that information because you're on the mortgage authorization form, right?
Right.
You'll be able to go and talk directly to that insurance company and say, hey, this particular property now is going to be underneath my insurance. Underneath my name, and you're going to provide something like this. Let me share this with you guys here. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, you see that right there? Let me blow it up a little bit bigger. Now this thing's in the way. All right, everybody kind of see that there? All right, so this is one of the pictures that I took on the slide. So this is just his example of his trust company. He puts everything in a trust, that's a whole nother 3-part series. But he puts everything to a trust, and he's basically saying that you're going to basically be taking over this particular property, and you're going to need to basically put everything in your name, right, into this trust. And if you don't have a trust, your company, your LLC or whatever. So once you get that information from the mortgage company, now you have direct contact with the insurance company, right? Now that you have direct contact with the insurance company, you just basically say, hey, look, I have the deed now. The property belongs to me. That mortgage, remember, it's only an escrow because of the mortgage is in escrow, but who does the mortgage belong to? The mortgage belongs to the old owners of the property. You have the deed, right? So you need to make sure that on your end that you're protected. Whether or not the insurance company wants to, if the mortgage wants their asset insured, that's perfectly fine, right? Because they're really, best case scenario, the mortgage company should never know that Bill owns the property, right? Best case scenario. But if something goes wrong, guess what? Bill still needs to have an insurance policy on the property. So Bill goes to another insurance company or this insurance company and says, hey, I need to open up a policy on this particular property. Your mortgage payment is not going to change, right? So because remember, you're agreeing to their mortgage and all the verbiage that's within it, right? You agreed that you're going to pay my mortgage bill, and I agreed when I signed that paper that I was going to pay $600 for my actual mortgage, $150 for taxes, and another $150 for insurance, for a total of $900 a month. Bill still has to pay that $900 a month, right? But Bill can also get a policy on the property because now Bill is the owner of the policy. I take the deed to the. Go ahead.
So this insurance is in addition to the actual PITI that's already associated with the origination of the loan.
Yeah, it could be it could be, and it probably will on most cases, unless the mortgage company is okay with you doing it. Which, again, I personally
right, because that's going to alert them to something going on.
Correct. So, but like I said, Mr. Robinson has way more experience in this. He said, Mr. Davidson has said that there's banks that they know exactly what they say. Listen, we know what you're doing. As long as you don't make any payment, you're good, right? So if that happens, then shoot, say, hey, since you know what I'm doing, let me get this insurance. But my thought process on it, like the way I'm doing it, because the way I just kind of showed it on the screen there, I'm trying to identify a property that I can put $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 worth of work into it, which means at that price point, you're probably talking a week to 2 weeks max of work. And I'm putting that thing on the MLS and I'm getting in and I'm getting out of it as quickly as possible, right? So I'm not going to bother with talking with the insurance company, with the mortgage company, trying to get my name to switch over to save $150 a month. I only plan on having this thing in my name for 2 months, 3 months tops. I'm trying to get back on the market. But if you want to keep it and hold on to it, like Mr. Robinson, he keeps and holds on to most of his properties, which is definitely a way to make a lot more money. He did an example where he went around the room and he gave us, I wish I should have brought the piece of paper with me. He gave us a case study with the numbers on and everything. He said, all right, everybody kind of go ahead and do it and find out how much money you would make. I got my notes right here. And at the end, me and Brian Arigbu ended up making the most amount of money that we're using the strategy that strategies that we were aware of. Right, I made $26,450, and he made $26,900. No, I made $26,543.50. He made like $26,900, so he made a little bit more than I did. At the end of the day, Mr. Robinson, using the same property, same subject to, he made over $100,000. Same property, same numbers. He made over $100,000. Okay. But the way he's doing it, he's holding on to the property, right? So for him, this would be more advantageous, right? So he's paying $150 times however many months he's holding it. If I'm just holding it for 3 months, I don't want the bank to know nothing. I just want to get out.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Second question was in relationship to the profit. Now, in the position of acquiring the property subject to, I'm sure in many cases the seller's going to want something up front or some type of, depending on how distressed they are, what's their situation. Because if they're giving it to you, there's some form of a need, whether it's just to get rid of the property or they need some type of financials. And I noticed you didn't really kind of calculate any type of seller contribution.
Yeah. So it because it's not always the case. Sometimes that's true and sometimes that's not. Sometimes there's cases. There was a case we didn't do this one because work was just a little bit too much work. But there was a guy in Riverdale. I forgot the guy's last name, but he basically was like, "Listen, man, I just don't want the foreclosure property on my name. Like, I know there's no room there. I'm not enough to make any money. So I know you're basically just taking this thing from me off my hands." There was another guy in Savannah. It was the same thing. He's like, "Man, I'm not looking for nothing. I just don't want the foreclosure." We just couldn't do it because he owed like $20,000 in back mortgage. Right? So it's not always the case. they want something. In this particular example, here with Mr. Robinson, I gave, I don't know if you guys can see it, I gave $4,600 to the seller, right? So $4,600 went to the seller in this particular example, right? Some people chose to give, I think Mr. Robinson was able to give $5,000 to the structure, right? But most people were somewhere around that $4,000 to $5,000. It just depends. It's a very case-by-case situation. Right?
And last, that 9% of the profit that came from the buyer and sellers, or the commission side for the real estate agents, and the 3% for closing, correct?
Correct. That's basically anytime I do a deal, I factor that in,
Okay.
just so I can have real numbers. So I don't trick myself or fool myself to thinking that I'm making all this money. I'm not taking into consideration paying real estate agents and closing attorneys.
Okay.
Cool.
Appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, man. Let me stop sharing this so I can see everybody's face. All right. Let me see. How long does a sub-2 take to complete? So personal experience, I've only done 2. The first one took about a month. The second one, man, I was working on that thing for about almost 3 months. All right. But then there's some that are really smooth, where the homeowner has all the paperwork. Like if you guys have ever gotten a mortgage, ever gotten a mortgage, you know it's like a freaking stack of papers, right? So homeowner might have everything and signs everything right there and good to go. Like it just really depends. Demesia, first time here. Thank you for taking the time to explain this. No problem. No problem. So the owner doesn't make any money. We just save them from It just really depends. You probably heard my explanation on that, but yeah, it just depends on the individual situation. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You got to understand, man, like we as investors are there to solve problems. We're there to solve problems. We're there to solve problems, not buy problems, okay? I am not going to purchase someone else's problem, which now has become my problem, okay? So ideally, I always want it to be a win-win situation. And for a lot of people, them not having a foreclosure on their name is a win, right? If I can afford to give them money, then obviously, yes, I want to be able to give them money. But there's sometimes where it doesn't make any sense to do that. There is something called there's something where we have like the best use of our finances, right? So if you guys have never heard this before, I used to think, man, I'm gonna save up a couple $100,000 and I'm just gonna use my own money to flip because I don't want to pay points. I don't want to pay these high interest rates, all these other things, right? That's stupid, right? Because that $100,000, $200,000, let's say I have $100,000 and I can get in and out of one flip, but I don't have to worry about any points or any interest on the money. Number one, I'm 100% exposed to risk, right? Number two, with that same 100,000, I may be able to take, 20,000 and get into 5 different flips. So now I'm minimizing my risk. I'm spreading my risk out, right? And it's just a better use of my money. So doing it this way, sometimes I might look at it and say, man, yeah, I'm making $20,000, but how much money, this money that I had in my bank account, could I have used that in another way to make more money, right? And so you always want to make sure that as an investor, we're using your own money, especially for something, because this is something that, like if you're going to do it the way I just did it right there, if you're going to wholesale it, then you're not using your own money. But if you're doing it the way I just showed you, where that example, I think the example ended up making $22,000. If you're going to do that, right, you're not doing that to make $5,000. I'll make $5,000 if I'm wholesaling it and I'm not putting any money out of my pocket. But if I'm putting money out of my pocket, I'm doing that to at least double my money. Like I'm not trying to come away and just barely make some money, okay? So, but that's me. There's sometimes maybe I really feel bad for a person's situation and I'm willing to take a little less money, right? That's going to be hit or miss. That's going to be a case-by-case scenario. So that's really going to be on you. In that particular case, yeah, it looks like I made $21,000. But what if during the course of me I don't know, what if when of course when we pull up the carpet, we find that, you know, we got some areas that are rotted out, and now there's the subflooring is messed up, and maybe we had a water leak that we didn't know about, and now we got to go fix that, right? So on paper that looks really good. Oh, you're gonna make $22,000, but if anybody has done any flips before, as soon as you start opening stuff up, you know things start to happen and money starts to leak, sometimes profusely. So you always want to hedge for those type of things. I've been studying Brian on sub 2 deals. No question I can think of right now. Okay, cool. Then who can file the home and its depreciation? Oh, very, very good question. Very good question. So in that packet of paperwork, I got to read through that non-disclosure thing because I don't want to get sued. He was very detailed on that they have no right to the depreciation. He said, this you could tell this is experience with him, right? He said, typically around November, they've been, all right, so all year they've been paying the mortgage statements, paying. And then all of a sudden in November, they don't get a statement anymore, right? The statement doesn't come to their office anymore. And why do you think that is? It's because the homeowner calls the mortgage company up and says, hey, tax season coming around. I need to take advantage of these tax breaks. And they change the address back from Mr. Robinson's office to their office, right? So very clear in the contract that they are not allowed to do that, that all the equity belongs to them, all the tax benefits belong to them, all the depreciation that they can write off belongs to them. So it belongs to the investor who does the subject to. So that's all in some of that paperwork. I got to read through that non-disclosure, see if I can give that out or not. And watch what you say on an ad to get motivated sellers. On an ad, watch what you say. Okay, maybe I'm not understanding it. We also need to have the money up front to pay the past due balance and give us some time to fix it up, and then sell it on the MLS. Need the money to pay the mortgage on unit. Yes, you do. But guess what? Every subject to doesn't mean that they're behind on payment. Just because you're doing a subject to doesn't automatically mean that they're behind on payments. Okay. Sometimes he gave an example where the people were paying it. They just matter of fact, he gave an example where a lady she wanted to move to New Orleans from North Carolina to go be with her family. And she's like, man, I just really want to get out of this property. I'm not behind on my payments. I just want to get out of it. I want to move to New Orleans. I'm older. I only got a little bit of life, left, and I want to spend it down there. And I don't want to have to spend it up here. Okay. Matter of fact, that particular example, she paid, get this guys, she paid $30,000 to the subject to person, the investor, right? She paid him $30,000 to take over her payment. The seller who owned the house gave the buyer $30,000 to take over, right? So there's layers to this stuff, okay? So you gotta learn this layer first, but there's layers to this thing. Cool. I don't know if you want me to, because you sent that to me privately, so I don't know if you want me to read that out. Let me get to some people that are raising their hands. Warren, I'm gonna lower your hand first, and then I got you, Yusef, second.
Okay, once a seller contacts you and you figure out your numbers and you think this may be a good subject to property, what's the time frame if they on the foreclosure or tax liens, or to get this done to stop the process of foreclosure or the tax lien from going to the steps?
What is the time frame?
Yeah, so if somebody contact me tomorrow and it's going on the tax lien or the auction the 1st of June, would I have enough time to structure a deal? And what do I need to do to get it stopped from going through the foreclosure or the tax lien process?
Pay, but you need to make sure. So in the simplest form, in order to stop the foreclosure process, is to pay what's due. But as an investor, it'd be dumb for you to do that without doing your due diligence, right? So typically that's not going to happen. They're not going to get paid until it goes to a closing attorney and the property is deeded over to you. Because if you pay it ahead of time and they decide, hey, my mortgage is paid off and I ain't signed nothing, I ain't giving this guy my house.
Right.
We're back on track now, baby. Right? You just gave him a gift, right? That could happen, right? So if today's the 22nd and it's going to the auction block on the 1st, that might be a little bit tight. You'd have to have everything would have to be smooth. There pretty much would have to be no other liens or other problems with the property. The closing attorney would have to be able to look up and find that property within the next 24 to 48 hours and get you guys to the closing table. Because normally if it's happening on the 1st, it's normally the Friday before it goes to the auction block that the banks require payment due.
Okay.
So you have a little bit less time than the 1st. That's my point I'm trying to give to you.
So once you get the contracts, the paperwork signed, so that's going to take some time to negotiate. And so you need.
Not necessarily. It just depends on the individual. Like if it's me, like I've gone through a foreclosure. And if someone would have came to me and said, hey, Tommy, man, you could save this foreclosure. I know it's going into foreclosure, in a month or so, or in 2 weeks or so. If you deed this property over to me, man, shoot, we'll take care of this thing. I would have signed everything right then and there, right? So, it's just one of those things where it just depends on the individual.
Okay. So you need at least enough time to get the paperwork done and have the closing, find your closing attorney to close the deal. And well, you get the deed over into your name and you have control. And that way, do you pay? All you need to do is catch up the payments. I'm thinking you got to pay the mortgage off. All you need to do is catch up the payments. Yeah,
if they're past due, yeah. And in your particular scenario, yes. But like I said, there are some times where they're not past due. They just don't want to deal with the property anymore.
Right.
So I don't want anybody on this call thinking that subject to automatically means the person is in the rears with their mortgage, because it doesn't always mean that. All right. But in the scenario that you just gave me, Warren, yes, you would have to catch up their payments in order to stop the foreclosure process. Cool?
Okay. Thank you.
No problem, brother. Yusef, what's good?
Hey, what's happening, bro?
What's up, man?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we're good.
I knew you were going to call me almost as soon as I pull up to this drive-through, but listen,
order me something.
Are you still, I don't think you eat this, bro. I've got a unique situation coming up on a property that I'm buying this weekend, and I was wondering, are you still taking the 30-minute coaching calls? Are you still, can we still buy those? So how do we schedule those with you?
You just go on the either through my Instagram or I think there's a link on the private Facebook group.
Okay, cool. Can I get one as soon as tomorrow? Because I'm trying to. Okay, all right. I'm gonna schedule it tonight with you. I could talk about it here, but it might get a little long-winded, And,
I got a phone call. I literally just texted them because I was supposed to be on a phone call with a buyer at 8:15.
Okay, cool. I'll just schedule it. All right.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, you can mute me back, man.
All right, perfect. All right, Dominic, what's up?
Tommy, what's happening, man?
What's up, bro?
I can't call it, man. Hey, man, it was great seeing you at the event, man. And I agree with you, man. Robinson.
Man, it was a good event, wasn't it, man?
Let me tell you what, man. That it's so powerful what he taught, man. I think I would encourage anybody who's listening right now, man, like get on that train, because that dude. I agree with Max. He's the OG. He's the OG. He is the OG. And also shout out to Young Zion, man, because I saw him on Instagram, man, getting down with that song, man. that made me laugh this morning, man. So and I heard you singing in the background too.
Oh yeah, I got a little something,
I see that.
Yeah, I was backup singer for Boys and Men at one point.
Yeah, that's what's up. So hey, man, my question was in regards to I agree with you in your approach and your strategy with the sub 2, because I think it makes perfect sense when you find something that's not going to cost that much, and like you got a light rehab to where you just have to paint, do some flooring, something simple, get in. With inventory being low right now in real estate, I think it makes perfect sense to do that. The one thing that I was asking you, are you looking at potentially maybe in the future actually holding on to some long term, and more specifically for just the depreciation aspect of actually holding a few just to help you offset some of the taxes that are come? And if you are, like, what are you thinking as far as what may be your strategy on, like, how many you may hold as opposed to to offset, if you're thinking that way right now?
Yeah, so good question. But so for me personally, no. I've done the single family home thing. I still have single family home rentals. I want to move to multifamily.
Gotcha.
And even multifamily, I really don't even want like 5 units. I want to be like 8, 10 or more, really.
Okay.
Me personally, there's nothing wrong with it. Like you saw Mr. Robinson, I'm not lying, right? He said he has like 70 going on right now, right? Right. So, yeah. So, but he has 70 single family homes. That's 70 insurance policies. That's 70 taxes. That's, it's for me, I'd rather have one building with 70 doors in it than to have 70 single family homes, 70 lawns to cut, right? Like, to me, I'd rather so what I'm trying to do is I want to use this money to buy multifamily.
I got you.
You're going to spend more. You're probably going to spend more, most likely. But I'd rather have all those units in one.
You're going to have the problems you got. You're going to have them like in one location as opposed to spread out 70. I understand.
Correct. Yeah.
That makes sense, bro.
Yep.
Appreciate it, bro.
No problem, man. My man, Caleb. My guy. What's up, man? Caleb, you close. How many deals you? We need to have a call with Caleb. That's what we need to do. Don't let Caleb fool you, man. He got money.
Hey, what's going on, Tommy, man?
What's up, brother?
Hey, yeah, man, this Zoom is right on time. I actually had a subject to deal that just kind of fell in my lap today that I'm gonna try to work through. But I tried to do some creative financing in the past when I first kind of started investing, and kind of fell through. So it's gonna be my first one that I'm gonna successfully do. But my question is on this one, man. I'm looking to take over the mortgage because the people, they're behind on their mortgage payments, and but they only own the house for like a little bit less than a year, about maybe 10 months. So there's not a lot of equity in the deal. Well, you still think it would make sense to kind of stay in this deal if I can get a pretty good down payment from a possible tenant buyer?
Oh, so what he's talking about is that, remember I told you guys in subject two is just how we get into it, but there's multiple strategies, right? So what he's talking about, saying, hey, I don't know your numbers. I'm just going to make these numbers up off the top of my head. You got a $100,000 mortgage. They came in with 3.5% down on FHA. They've only been in it for 10 months. So they put down $3,500, and maybe there's like, they have $4,000, $5,000 worth of equity in it, right? They don't have a lot of equity in it, right? 10 months. So, but if you can get into that property, if you can take over their payments, how much are their mortgage payments?
$1,500 a month.
And they're how far behind?
They're 2 months going on 3. And also the good thing about the house is it's a new construction house, big house, 3,000 square feet in a new subdivision. So, the house actually has appreciated, maybe $25,000, $30,000 just because, it was one of the first houses sold and there's higher comps, in the neighborhood.
Are you willing to share real numbers?
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
yeah.
Cool. Let's do this then. Let's do this. All right, this will be a good example. This is a real life example. So let me move this out the way and undo. Let's clear everything. All right, cool. So what is this thing? If you were to, 10 months, if it's brand new, hopefully they didn't mess it up too bad. But once you got it up to HGTV standards, what could it sell on the open market for?
$225,000 is what I got a comp for in the neighborhood.
So 225.
And it may be more than that. I think that house was actually smaller. You say it's 225,000.
Okay.
Oh crap.
So 225. And how much is owed on the mortgage?
They owe, looking at it now, about 100,000, 190, 700.
Okay, so they do have they have a little more than I thought. So 197, let's call it 197. So this is ARV, all right? And then they owe 197, okay? So and you have to pay, so you got to pay $4,500 to catch up to it. How much work needs to come out? How much work do you need to do on it?
I would imagine nothing. I've only owned it for like 10 months. I mean, couldn't imagine they tore it up. That amount of time frame.
They got kids?
She has a son.
Yeah, they got,
Maybe like a 4-year-old.
oh yeah. There's some marks on that wall.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to put some paint into it, but you shouldn't have to do too much, right? So you got to pay $45 for a mortgage, and let's say you got to pay, like $2,000, right, to get it back up to par, to put it back on the market for, to get it to that 225. So here's what here's what we have to distinguish, right? Everything below here is what's coming out of his pocket right now. Okay, actually, let me undo that, because you're gonna have to pay on closing costs. So let me see if it's they're closing at 197,000.03. That's like 50. That's almost $6,000 in closing costs. You got somebody that can help you out with closing costs, or does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
It's about 1,500, you said?
No, I said 6,000.
Oh, well, that seems kind of high, but
how much? What do you normally pay on your closing costs for? Because normally it's about 3% of the purchase price, or yeah.
ARV.
What's that?
So yeah, I never did a deal like this, but most of the houses we close on, it's a lot cheaper than that. But yeah, we can go with the 3%.
Let's just say 6,000, right? So 6K. All right. So you're coming out. That's 8. That's 12,500, right? So you spend 12,500 to out of your pocket, right? But now you control an asset that's worth $225,000, right? So $12,500 to get into this property. Remember, you have to pay attention to this, okay? Because we're saying they owe 197, but this $4,500 that they're behind is part of this 197, okay? So if you were to sell that, this 4,500 that you paid off brought this 197 down, whatever it did, okay? So I don't know what their interest rate is. That's why you need to know the interest rates to figure all those numbers out if you really want to get really, really super precise. But for right now, let's just deal with the raw math here. 12,500 came out of Caleb's pocket in order to do this. Now, what he's talking about doing is possibly, I'm assuming you're talking about like a lease option?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to do a lease option with how much percent down?
Man, I don't know how much percent I was thinking about, but I mean, I was at least trying to get 15 to 20, for it to make sense based on the numbers that you got drawn up right now.
Yeah, most of the time it's 10% of what the ARV or the sales price would be, right? That would be 22,500. But let's just say you were nice and you want to get this thing moved real quick, right? So here's Caleb's side. This is what he had to come out of pocket with, but he's doing a lease option now. So now the property is deeded to him. So now he's doing this lease option, and he's asking for $15,000 down. Okay. So I come along, and I don't have good credit, but I work a pretty good job, right? Or some money was left to me, right? And I got a little bit of money saved up, but I won't be able to qualify for a $225,000 loan. But I know I can make the payments. Like I'm good with making the payments. So I say, all right, Caleb, I'll give you your $15,000 down. So I put down $15,000 out of my pocket. And what's the rental rate there in that neighborhood?
Between 1,500 and 1,800, I'm seeing.
And the mortgage is 1,500?
Yeah.
Okay. So in that particular case, what we need to do is we're going to do this lease option with you said 1,500, 1,800. We'll probably go with that 1,700 and tell them, listen, you're paying 1,700. We're going to do the 1,700, but you're also going to be responsible, because I'm thinking if you're going to put $15,000 down, you're going to want to purchase this thing. Okay. So $1,700 down, but you're also responsible for taxes and insurance. All right. So now you're paying $1,500 in mortgage. So Caleb every month is paying $15K or $1,500. I'm sorry, in mortgage. All right. That's what you're paying on your monthly mortgage. but you're collecting you got your $15,000 up front. So you got your $2,500 in the positive, right? Because out of your pocket came 12.5. So you're $2,500 in the positive, all right? Plus they're paying $1,700 plus taxes and insurance on it. So I don't know what taxes and insurance are, but let's just say it's an additional $250 a month, okay? But your $1,500, what is that already automatically including? PITI, right?
Yep.
That's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So the taxes and insurance are already being paid here on your $1,500. Their $1,700 is going to be $1,700 plus taxes and insurance. So plus, let's just say $250. So really, what are they really paying? $1,950, right? But they're in a property that they would probably not be able to get, or obviously they would not be able to get because they're coming to you, okay? So they're not able to get into the property. If they're okay with this and they're happy with this, they say, listen, here's the process of this. You're going to do this for 24 months, okay? So 24 months, you're going to be paying this $1,950. After that, you should have had the ability to either improve your credit, and what we're going to show here on the bank is that, hey, Chase Bank, these people have been, the mortgage is only $1,500. They've been paying $1,950. They can obviously handle this mortgage. You've established a history for the last 24 months of being able to handle more than what the mortgage is paid for. Now go ahead and sell this property at whatever, because obviously this 225 or this 197 will be lower, but they agreed to the price of 225. You see what I'm saying? So you've collected 2,500. You collected 15,000, which this is offset by that. So you made 2,500, and you're collecting an additional 450 a month in rent income. Okay, over the course of 24 months. So let's look what that is. So 450 a month times 24 months. That's an additional 10,800. Over the last 2 years, let's say this mortgage has gone from 197. It's not going to go down drastically, but let's say it goes down from 197 to 193. Okay, and you sell it to them at 225. They lock in that price at 225 minus 193. You've made $32,000 off of the sale of the property. Obviously, you got to pay. Are you a real estate? You're a real estate agent, right?
No, I'm not an agent.
Oh, okay. Well, shoot, I am, so I'll sell it for you. That 3%.
Okay.
So that's another way that you can use a subject to. Like I said, this subject to thing is dynamic because you can take a deal that obviously we look at these numbers. This does not make sense to do as a wholesale deal. All right. But if you have, and we're going to talk about this on next month because I got you ready for this call. But I'm not next month, next week. How do we find people that are looking for these type of deals where they say, hey man, I want this lease option. I want a rent to own program. I got $20,000. I just don't have the credit to get into the property. I got a good job. I just made some mistakes. Back when the market crashed, I lost my condo, right? I had a foreclosure on my property. I was looking for a rent to own. I didn't get one, but I was looking for one, right? So, those type of people are out there they're good people that are looking for a way to get into a property where they can get into it and they can raise their kids and stay there for the next 30 years. This could be a solution for them. You just got to be able to make sure that you're available and ready to take care of this 1,500, whether or not they do a rent to own or not, right? Because you're going to be responsible for your seller's credit history, essentially, right? They're trusting you with that. So you just got to make sure that you're able to do that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, perfect, cool. All right, let me stop sharing there. I don't think I got any more hands up. Perfect. I'm going to, let me try to go through these questions really quick. Jamesia, I don't know, you sent a private message. So I don't know.
You answered both of my questions. I didn't realize this is the first time I've gotten on here, so I didn't realize that it was public and private, but I'm good. Thank you.
No problem. Sharon, Tommy, do you think it would be difficult to sell on MLS without having the mortgage in your name? No, because that's why I want to, in the beginning, it's a very good question, Sharon. Understand. I really need you to understand, okay? Deed mortgage, two completely separate things, okay? The thing that links the deed to the mortgage is the original owner, me. I'm in the middle of the picture, right? So here's the mortgage from the bank, here's me in the middle, and here's the deed. I can give this deed to whoever I want to. Now they own the house. The deed represents ownership of the home, not the mortgage. The mortgage represents the financial promise, the financial obligation that me, the homeowner, says that I'm willing to pay. It's completely separate. It's separate from the deed. Or once you deed it over to it, becomes separate, I should say. That's a better way of saying it. Once I relinquish the deed to someone else, to Caleb, right, who's going to take this property, once I relinquish that deed, I've relinquished ownership to the property. I have not relinquished ownership to the mortgage. So you have to really understand that once he does that, once that he or she does that, that deed is now completely separate of the mortgage, okay? Which means I can go ahead, I can resell that property. But when I resell it and the closing attorney does a title search on it, is going to see that there was a recorded lien called a mortgage against the property. And that lien needs to be settled and satisfied before I collect any money, or before, in this particular case, Caleb collects any money. Does that make sense? They have to, when the title attorney or the title company or the attorney goes back and says, okay, are there any liens? Are there any tax liens? Nope, taxes are paid, but we got this, $193,000 mortgage that needs to get paid off before Caleb gets paid. That's when it comes into play. Okay. Dominic, no, I don't plan on holding these sub 2 properties long term, especially after Mr. Robinson's course. I really don't plan on doing that. I plan on getting in and getting out and buying rentals, buying multifamily rentals. Nah, he definitely wasn't pulling your leg, Nakia, for sure. What's the name of the Facebook group? It is E2E Wholesaling Edition. Man, my voice keeps cracking. I'm going through puberty. I think I'm talking too much. Listen, go to E2E Wholesaling Edition. You just put that in the search column. Just type in it and you answer the 3 questions. If you don't answer the 3, well, it's really 2 questions in a statement. If you don't answer them, I don't let you in. I do need to let some people in. I understand that. You will be let in today. I have someone who is behind on her mortgage. This is private. I don't know if you want me to, Technikia, read that out privately. Home for 10. Technikia, do you want me to read? Because you said it to me private, so I'm trying to, I don't know if you're okay with me reading it out or answering it out. It's kind of hard to answer it.
Yeah, you can answer that. Well, I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So it does sound like it's something, but it really just depends on just because they've been in the home for 10 years. I mean, her question was, I have someone who's behind on her mortgage and she doesn't want to move. She's been in the home for 10 years and she's about to go into foreclosure. It sounds like I can do this deal with her. How do I get about getting the info? That form that's in the group, the mortgage authorization form, that's step 1. After she's agreed, after she has to agree to this, you need to get that mortgage authorization form from her so you can talk to the bank. You want to trust, someone told me this, I forgot where I heard this from, trust the homeowner, but always verify. So we don't want to call him a liar. We want to trust them. Say, yeah, I believe you, but I need to verify, right? But your thing is that she's saying that she doesn't want to move. So this is where you can do a subject to what a wraparound mortgage, where you basically are a seller buyback mortgage, where basically the seller deeds you over the property. So now you own it. You take over the mortgage payments, but now she pays you rent. Okay. And she can pay you rent, or you can do where she basically you now own the property, but you own or finance the property back to her. So she can eventually, so she doesn't have to move, right? If she's older, she might just want to lease it from you, because with the home ownership, if you're not an investor, with home ownership comes what? Problems, right? Every once in a while, that hot water gonna need to get fixed. Every once in a while, that roof is gonna need to get done. So sometimes there's a lot of benefits to renting, right? So, maybe she doesn't want to own it. Maybe she's perfectly okay with just staying there and paying rent. Okay, but those are things you're gonna have to talk with her about.
But then wouldn't she be responsible for the mortgage to get it caught up as well as the repairs while she's renting it and still living there?
No, because once you do this subject to, this is why you guys really understand this. Once you do the subject to, on paper, this lady is responsible for the mortgage, but
Okay.
you are now responsible for that mortgage. Like morally and ethically, you have said to her, hey, ma'am, I'm going to catch you up on your mortgage and I'm going to be responsible for your mortgage. Even though it's going to be in your name, the money's coming out of my pocket. Whether or not you pay me mortgage, you pay me rent or not, I need to be responsible enough to pay your mortgage. So that's why I personally don't want to stay in them. I want to get Mr. Robinson, who knows way more than me, he stays in them. But Mr. Robinson he can have 10 mortgages and pay it, right? He's good, right? I'm not paying somebody's mortgage for, I don't want to be in it for that long. I'd rather get in and get out and get multifamilies. But neither one is wrong. It's just a matter of preference. Okay. Let me see. I need to leave the meeting. I have to meet with the seller. Okay. All right. Big dog. Let me make sure you give me some of that money. Or is this something I should look at after I just kind of answered that. No, you can do that right now. It's fine. Are we gonna a market crash chat? Area we gone crash chat. I don't know what that means. Any HOA on that deal? On which one, Bill? Which deal you talking about? Any HOA? You're not. Hold on, let me take you off mute.
You hear me?
Yeah, now I got it.
Caleb was talking about. I wanted to see was it any HOAs because he said it was construction.
Got you. Caleb, can you advise whether or not there was any HOAs? Shoot, where'd my chat go? Okay. Caleb, are you there? I don't know if Caleb. Oh, Caleb, can you hear us? I'm trying to unmute you, Caleb.
Oh, what's up? What's up, Tommy?
No, someone was asking, was there any HOAs on that deal?
Yeah, I just text the seller and asked them. It's $366 a year.
Oh, $366 a year. So it's minimal, all right? Yeah, so that's good.
That's a good question because I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, you would again. So if you go on to our group and you get into the downloads, the purchase and sales agreement that you're going to need, it's going to ask. It's going to be one of the fields. So basically, you just got to follow down the paperwork, and it'll lead you to the questions you need to ask.
You got to be mindful too, though, with the HOAs. They have bylaws too that talk about transferring of property.
They absolutely do. I actually ran into that a little bit with because the people I wholesaled my sub 2 deal to, they were renting it. So since they're renting it, the HOA had no clue that there was a renter there. So that was one of the issues. So this thing is like it's like a delicate balance that you have to play, right? You kind of have to walk this tightrope where you need to make sure that you find out as much information as possible without divulging so much information. Because I didn't know that about that HOA, and I kind of divulged that, and I almost messed up that deal. So, but that's all good things to think about. I thought that was a man bag at first. If she can't pay now, I would trust she would pay as a tenant. I wouldn't trust she would pay as a tenant. That's a very good point, Sharon. So you just gotta have to play those, check you know, check that account. Where's that money going to? You have to treat her just like a tenant. Are we going to have a market crash? Chat to what are the best ways for a new investor to get deals when it happens. Oh, if we have a market crash, trust me, as a wholesaler, you're going to be straight because there's going to be a lot of inventory. So this is why learning how to wholesale, I think, is so important. And it's getting dark. It's so important because when the market crashes, there's tons of inventory. There's a lot of people that need to sell their home. So since they need to sell their home, you know, they're going to be in a position where they're willing to go ahead and let the property go for less money. All right, I think that's everybody. There's nothing else in the chat. If I missed you, my bad. I do need to go because we were supposed to be on the phone at 8:15. It's now 8:45. So I need to call these two investors and make this thing happen. So if you guys have any questions, think about the Facebook group. I mentioned that already. Go on to Facebook and type in E2E Wholesaling Edition in the search, and then answer the 3 questions. No problem, Jamesia. All right, so yeah, make sure you guys are here on Sunday where we go over the paperwork side of things. This was good for you guys to understand. Think of your questions now. So that one will be a little bit shorter. I'll leave more time for Q&A. All right. Sorry, I know you got questions, but I definitely have to go. I'm 30 minutes late on this call. So save your questions, write them down, and we'll chat on Sunday. All right, everybody. Talk to you guys later. Love.